Good evening. Welcome to Gita Wisdom with Lakshmi. Today is what is today? May 27th. So we are continuing our journey with the Bhagavad Gita on chapter 2. This is the chapter called Sankhya Yoga, or the Yoga of Analysis. So Krishna is giving us an analysis of the difference of the distinction between matter and spirit. So good evening, Trish, Kunya Rupani, Amy, Joanna, Jai Krishna. Thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join me in this Bhagavad Gita study course. So if you have a Bhagavad Gita, and you can turn to, I'll begin on chapter 2, text 27. Okay. And as we normally do, just to give you a little sense, a little feeling for the Bhagavad Gita, I'll read some Sanskrit. So, Jatasya hi dhruvo mrityur dhruvam janma mritasya cha tasmad apartharye te natvam sochitum arhasi. Translation: One who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death, one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. So this verse is a kind of an introduction. Krishna is giving Arjuna the instructions as to why he should not lament. And Krishna gives a few reasons why he should not lament at death. And basically, those instructions are not only for Arjuna, of course, as we've mentioned many times before. Arjuna is serving as the everyman, and he is actually the representative of humanity. So for all of us, for all time, universal wisdom is applicable. Can I have that, please? Thank you. So this universal wisdom is applicable at all times and all places. So what is Krishna saying here? Logic, right? Can anyone refute this logic? One who has taken his birth is sure to die. That is a statement I think most people can accept, no matter what their belief system is or realization level, experience, etc. We can easily understand that based on our experience. We had great grandparents, grandparents, and parents. So in my case, they're all gone. They were here. I experienced and had relationships with them, but they're gone. They were born and they were sure to die, and they did. And in my case, it will be the same thing. I took birth 75 years ago in Newark, New Jersey, and I'm here by God's grace, still here at 75. But what Krishna is saying here, death is certain. So this wisdom is to give us the strength of knowledge and encouragement to understand that we don't die. Where does the fear of death actually come? Because we don't know what that means. What is that going to bring us? Our experience is what? Our experience is life, existence, conscious awareness. So the promise of death means that is all going to be gone. Life is going to be gone. Awareness is going to be gone. The experience of death, and we don't know what's beyond that. So these are all factors in what creates this fear that we are not going to have awareness anymore. We are not going to have life anymore. We will cease to exist. Like a bubble, it is very beautiful, and then it pops, and the bubble and its beauty ceases to exist. So we are a bubble of life. We are beautiful living entities, and then the assumption, due to lack of knowledge, is that when that bubble bursts, when we die, we will cease to exist. And that's where the fear takes place. That's where the fear comes in, the fear of the unknown. We cannot imagine, nor do we have the experience of unawareness. We are aware at all times, even in our sleep, we dream. Even if we're knocked unconscious. I remember I was playing football when I was around 8 or 9 years old, and I ran into a boy bigger than me, and I fell into the ground, hit my head on a rock, and was knocked unconscious. But I was aware there was like a dream state when you are knocked unconscious. So we have in all states of our existence, whether conscious or unconscious, there's awareness there. So it's easy to understand why someone would be fearful of no consciousness, no existence. That's totally understandable. But the reality is, we do have consciousness, we do have awareness eternally. And this is what Krishna is saying, why he's making this strong case here in the second chapter. It's the foundation for a fearless existence. And we need that fearless existence because at the time of death, rather than being so fearful that everything becomes confusing and bewildering, and we breathe heavy and fast because of anxiety, and we cannot focus. This is all due to fear. So this knowledge that Krishna is giving Arjuna is to remove that fear, remove that doubt that we are going to not exist anymore. This is monumental in terms of knowledge, the foundation for fearlessness. So what was Arjuna's confusion? I am going to be the wielder of the sword of death in this battle. I am going to kill. But in Bhagavad Gita, it says that one is not slain, nor can one slay. Krishna says that a few verses back, meaning that the soul, this verse we read, I think, Nainam Chindanti Shastrani, the soul can't be cut by any kind of weapon. The soul cannot be withered by the wind. The soul cannot be burnt by fire, and the soul cannot be moistened by water. Those are all fire, air, water, ether, other elements that are in the earth, which create the sword or the spear or the bullet. None of those elements can do any damage or cause any damage to the eternal soul. And that's what Krishna is telling Arjuna. You are confused about your duty. You are disturbed. You are dejected. You are sad, depressed because of the notion that you are capable of killing these living entities. But that is not the case. The case is the soul is eternal. Now, one may say, okay, that sounds dangerous. That sounds like a justification for killing. So be clear, and in the upcoming verses, Krishna is going to talk a little bit about that, but be clear that Krishna is not saying that. He's not giving justification so that you can kill. He's saying that Dharma is very important component of a civilized human society, acting responsibly, acting dutifully, acting according in harmony, in alignment with the universal laws is very, very important principle for proper human culture. So it's not that it's a carte blanche that you can kill or you can commit murder. Just like in the Bible, what are the Ten Commandments? Thou shalt not kill, right? That is a commandment. What does that commandment actually mean? It does not mean thou shalt not kill human beings. There's in the ancient language, Aramaic and Hebrew, the ancient language of the Bhagavad Gita, uh, uh, there are different words, just like in Sanskrit, you can have several different words for the meaning of um, pride. These several different words can indicate pride. How it's used in context that determines what meaning is there. Just like in English, if you look in the dictionary for nature, nature has different meanings. It has several different meanings. And according to its context, it assumes one or the other definition. So Sanskrit and ancient languages like the Aramaic or Hebrew or Latin, etc., run on the same principle, context. What's the context? So in this regard, we see that that verse in the Bible, thou shalt not kill, if it meant murder a human being, the word in the ancient language of Aramaic would be one particular word. But that word is not used in that regard. The word that is used means kill anything. So really, that commandment is in alignment with the Bhagavad Gita, which says ahimsa, the principle of ahimsa, not any living entity. But over the course of time, it has been misunderstood and not defined properly in the Ten Commandments, meaning thou shalt not kill any living entity. And this is what Patanjali says. When you're a human being, you should follow yamas and niyamas, uh, uh, laws or principles for inner development, principles for your interacting with the outside world, yamas and niyamas. And without following those principles, those dharmic principles, then you can't really perform yoga. That's why yoga, if someone is seriously following yoga and practicing yoga, there's the principle of ahimsa, and ahimsa means nonviolence, and nonviolence means to any living entity. So Krishna is saying he's not asking Arjuna to commit violence. He's asking Arjuna to fulfill his dharmic, his dutiful responsibility as a protectorate of innocent citizens. That is what Arjuna, as a warrior, and the word is chat, kshatriya in Sanskrit. Chat means harm, and trayate, that means to protect. So the responsibility of the warrior in the culture of Bhagavad Gita, and we also have it in our culture in the form of the military or the police department. These are agencies or departments which are meant to protect the citizens. In other words, the U.S. military force is meant to protect the well-being of all U.S. citizens, whether in country or abroad. Locally, the police department is to protect the citizens of the town. So you may live in a particular town, your township more than likely has a police force. So they are authorized to use force when it is required. And there is no reprimand, there is no punishment if a military man doing his responsibility in service to his country kills what is deemed the enemy or a threat to the citizens of his country. Similarly, Arjuna is such a person. He's a military man. He's a kshatriya. He's a protector from harm to all societies. So in that duty, with that responsibility, he is exonerated. He is free from any kind of punishment if he is to fight on behalf of the well-being of the citizens. So what is being described here is not violence, but it is actually in keeping with Dharma, in keeping with duty, in keeping with his responsibility as a kshatriya or a warrior or a protector of his society. And Krishna is telling him that. And not only is he telling him to do his duty, he's telling him why. And that's what this verse is saying, that one who has taken birth is sure to die. And after death, one is sure to take birth again. So he's talking about transmigration of the soul, or another word which is commonly used, reincarnation. This verse points to reincarnation, that the soul reincarnates. What does incarnate mean? To be born, to be manifest. Reincarnate, when you put the prefix in front of a word, it means again, to be born again. Reincarnation. Respect. To spect means to look. So re in front of spect means to look again. That's why the word respect means to look again and understand the nature of the individual and how all living beings are worthy of respect. So this is the verse that we're dealing with right now. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. This is your duty. This is your responsibility, Arjuna. As a warrior, you protect, don't lament. And in actuality, you are not killing. The soul is eternal. And each soul is endowed with the karma, which means karma forms our destiny. The actions that we perform, there are reactions to those actions. If they're good actions, we get good reactions to those actions. If they're bad actions, we get bad reactions to those actions. So karma, this law of karma, directly tied into reincarnation, is an important principle to understand. And that's why Krishna is delineating all of these different um, uh, points of logic, establishing those principles of karma and reincarnation. Karma is to help us to become responsible, to take responsibility for our actions, right? What do we teach our children? It's one of the primary things we teach our children as parents. We want our children to understand that they have to learn in the maturation process, in their growth process, in their development, emotional development. They have to understand the principle of taking responsibility for their actions. Constant conversation here in my household with my son, because my son's very sharp and he likes to do things in a way that manipulates the situation so he gets what he wants. And I tell him, no, the truth will set you free. The truth actually will be a very powerful force in your life. According to Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, those who speak the truth, their words come to pass. In other words, if you speak the truth, you serve more as a truth seer. Your words, if you say something, those words actually come to pass. I know I had one friend of mine, and he made a statement. I was lamenting about a particular thing, and he made a statement because he was a very truthful devotee. He said, "Do not worry. You will experience exactly what your heart's desire, what you are going to experience." And this was in relationship to my teacher. And don't you know it? Exactly what he said came to pass. So that's the potency of truth. And we have to have faith in that, to be truth seekers, and have faith in the truth, in the potency of truth. So Krishna is giving us eternal truths. That's what tattva means. If you remember, I spoke about the five tattvas or the five truths, Ishwara or the supreme controller, Jiva or the soul, um, um, Prakriti or the material energy, Kala or time, and Karma action. These are the five tattvas that Krishna talks about in the Bhagavad Gita. This is knowledge or wisdom so that we can see the truth and live the truth. And when we become confused, bewildered, like in the case of Arjuna, it's very hard for us to have the perspective of truth and to have the faith that that is the
Sì,
truth.
está bien, gracias.
So
Sì, sì,
one of the
Obrigada.
principles, Angelica, mute yourself, please. One of the principles of truth that Krishna is imparting to Arjuna is that if you are born, you are sure to die. Logic. Now, the next one is a leap of faith. If you die, you're sure to take birth again. And Krishna, in the upcoming verses, and in some of the preceding verses, he is establishing that principle. The establishment of the distinction between matter and spirit is what frees us from suffering condition. Yoga is meant, the philosophy of yoga is meant to free us from the suffering condition. It will not free us from pain. Pain will come because our body has pain sensors or pain nerves. And they're there to serve a purpose in terms of the mechanism or the yantra of the body. Yantra Rudhani Maya, this body made of material energy. And part of the mechanism, the wiring of the body, is to have, nerve endings, which will transmit pain, which will give us an indication that we have to uh, uh, respond in a particular way as a result of that pain. For instance, if we didn't have pain nerves and we picked up a hot item, burning hot, white hot item, I did that once. I was cooking, I like to cook, and I had the handle. It was a cast iron frying pan, and the handle was over another burner that was on. So the handle became hot, so hot. When I picked it up, you know, the initial reaction was, "Oh my God!" And then I dropped it, and it was so hot that wherever the handle, there was a hole in the handle. So the shape of the handle was red, and then there was on my hand, and then there's the white spot where the hole was. That's how hot it was. So these different elements that we're experiencing, it may cause pain. We may experience pain, but suffering is a mental thing. What we do with all the things, the challenges that come our way. Pain is not only caused by material elements, that are formed into weapons, but it's also comes from sound. When someone says something harsh to us, that causes pain. And sometimes the pain of sound, a sound vibration, someone criticizing you, someone belittling you, someone, just finding the spot or the button that really is painful. That can have more pain to the heart and scarring to the heart than what the elements can do, what iron can do, cast iron griddle, because the suffering from that pain lingers. Now, when you get physical pain that's coming through material elements like iron, earth, water, fire, that'll come and it'll heal. But when through sound vibration we experience that pain, the healing process, we have to be very learned and mature and introspective to understand. There was this one great saintly person I knew. His name was Akinchana Krishna Das Babaji. He was a great holy man, renunciate. He had very little possessions, and he would just travel around India and encourage people to chant God's names. So one time he went to visit a temple, and the temple had a lot of stairs. You had to walk up all these stairs to get to the entryway to the temple. So he was doing that, and there were some young monks standing at the top, and they started criticizing him. Oh, here comes a Kinchana Krishna Das Babaji. He's coming just to eat. Because in many temples in India, they freely distribute food, sanctified food, which is called prasadam, to whoever comes. So basically, they were saying he's a beggar. So, do you know what a Kinchana Krishna response was, Maharaj? You know what his response was? He started laughing and he said, "These boys, they know me for who I am." And he was laughing and laughing. So, humility, the potency of humility in dealing with harsh words, attacks on one's character, humility is such a potent force that it's an umbrella. It shields us from the cruelty of harsh words. It deflects it because, one who is genuinely humble says, to oneself, well, maybe there is an element of truth in what that person is saying, rather than, oh, how can they say that about me? I'm such a good person. Now, Akinchana Krishna Das Babaji, the response could be, how can they say that about me? Everyone reveres me as a great saint. But he didn't. He was revered as a great saint because of his humility. So this is the kind of change of mindset that yoga brings when we are understanding these yogic philosophical principles, psychological principles. It's a change of mindset. We mature in such a way, such a deep and profound way, that we don't take things personally. We say, maybe there's an element of truth in that. Maybe this is a statement that should cause me to look at myself deeper. We can't change others. Sometimes the mistake we have in relationships is if the other person changes, our relationship will get better. I was in a relationship and that was the justification. If you got, if you changed your ways, our relationship would be so much better. Now, that person or me saying something similar to that, we can't change others. The only way we can affect a change in a relationship or an interaction is if we look at ourselves, if we're introspective with ourselves. You want to give good counsel to people? Be astute, be aware of your own defects. Don't be expert at finding fault with others, but actually be very expert at finding the fault in ourselves, in our own hearts. If we can find the faults in our own heart and root them out, then we could be good counselors for others. We can be objective. We could be truthful. We can actually be a good counselor, a good shoulder to cry on, and to give effective advice. And the principle is look into your own heart. Don't think that you can change that person and everything will be fine. That's not what will affect change. What will affect change is if we ourselves can be good examples in our character, in our life, and even we have a relationship, and even there may be tension in the relationship, it will have an effect by virtue of how you respond. So the pain, the suffering, pain will be there. The suffering is how we respond on a mental level. So this is what Krishna is saying. You're eternal. Meditate, understand that principle. And the suffering from the pain will be minimized because we will be deep and mature emotionally to handle it and to respond to it properly so that it doesn't leave a significant scar on our heart. Next verse reads, all created beings are unmanifest in their beginning, manifest in their interim state, and unmanifest again when annihilated. So what need is there for lamentation? Krishna is going through a different perspectives, different scenarios that one can look at. What is the first one he's saying? Look at the logic. The logic is we're born, right? Dehinosmin yata dehe kamodam jovanam jara. Tata dehantara praptir diras tatra namuyate. That what's changing is the body. We're into a baby body, a young child body, adolescent body, youth body, adult body, middle-aged adult body, old age adult body. We go through, but the consistent factor that is unchanging and remains consistent and fixed, Krishna is saying, is consciousness. And that consciousness is emanating from the soul. Conscious awareness of things around us, our own situation is emanating from soul. Krishna is saying that. So here he's saying, okay, that's one perspective that he's giving Arjuna, who says the logic perspective. Now he's saying, okay, energy, they say, even scientists say, energy is eternal, right? It just goes through certain changes. So what is Krishna saying here? All created beings are unmanifest in their beginning. It means prior, the energy which forms who we are existed, wasn't created out of thin air, but it existed. And then, due to the laws of nature, it created the living entity, and that energy manifests itself. And that energy has some duration, which is called our life cycle. And that duration has a beginning and an end to our life cycle. So its energy is unmanifest. It manifests, creates an interim stage where it is active, and then death causes that same energy to unmanifest itself. So that's a very Buddhistic understanding. It's also, what science points to, that the energy is a stream, of flow, a stream of consciousness, and it always. So Krishna is saying here, he's using that same argument. All right, you don't accept the soul. You don't accept the spirit soul as a finite atomic particle of spiritual energy that has consciousness, eternal consciousness. So then he's giving another perspective here in this particular verse. And he says, if we understand, even if you understand life that way, then what is the cause for lamentation? Why are you lamenting? That energy flow will continue. It will be unmanifest, manifest, interim state, unmanifest again. And if the flow continues, that eternal energy flow continues, it will more than likely manifest again. So Krishna is using that argument to convince Arjuna why he should not be Vishada or lamenting or dejected about what point his duty is bringing him to. What point is his duty bringing him? Bringing him to the point of being responsible, who you are as a Kshatriya. Be responsible. And that is Dharma. And that aligns you with the principles of the universe. And that is what causes us to have a smooth and flowing life. People who think that they can get away with stealing from people, cheating people, manipulating people are under gross illusion because they will not get away. They may get away with it karmically. They may have a certain kind of karma that will make them a billionaire or something like that due to, cheating and tricking and all those things. But the ultimate reaction will be there. If not in the current life, in the next life. They carry the karma and the reactions to that karma over to the next life. And then one of the things that can happen is if you've spent your life adharmically, meaning acting in such a way where you're irresponsible, where you're not concerned about the well-being of others, if you're acting in that particular way, then that can happen to you. You can then flip from doing it to others to having it done to you. This is the importance of understanding. One of the many reasons for understanding the principle of eternality of the soul. If we understand it, then we know we don't get away with anything. Everything is chronicled. We don't get away with it. And it may appear during the course of your life that you're getting away with it, but it won't. It will follow you. It will haunt you, just like shadow and sunshine. If you're in sunshine, there's shadow. They'll both be there. Karma. If you're acting, there's reaction. And if you're acting positively or good, there will be a positive reaction. If you're acting badly, there'll be a negative reaction. All of these principles are there. This helps us. Knowledge frees us from doubt. Knowledge is liberating. Ignorance means to ignore. So we ignore principles of responsible behavior if we do not open our eyes and open our hearts and try to bring ourselves to the point of understanding that the soul is an eternal living being who is traveling a course, is traversing a path. And that path ultimately should lead us to moksha. Remember, I spoke about life as a journey, and that journey we have four wheels, and the four wheels are kama, artha, dharma, and moksha, which means the desire for sense gratification, to have our senses gratified, the ability to support that gratification through artha or economic development. But both of those things, whether gratification of the senses or working hard to build your economic base so you can have the house, the car, etc., both of those things are governed by dharma. That if you live a dharmic life, it's good. You'll be sure to have good karma. But if you live an adharmic life, you'll be sure to act in ways which are adharmic and will be the source of your suffering and your pain in the future. So they're interrelated. All of these principles are in service to each other. So dharma, kama, artha or gratification, economic development, and living responsibly is in service to ultimately on your path of life, the fourth wheel. If you have a car with four wheels and only three of them are functioning, it's going to be a very difficult journey for you. But if all four wheels are, have the proper air pressure and have the proper treads on it and are in good shape, then your journey will be guaranteed. You won't have any difficulty in your journey. So similarly, the four wheels in our life journey, those three of kama, artha, and dharma, or gratification, economic development, and responsible activity, should create within us, within our microcosmic universe of the body and our mind, should create a sattvic or a mode of goodness environment, psychologically, physically, emotionally. It should create that kind of environment, internal environment. And what does that mean? That means it's open for knowledge, not just academic knowledge or occupational knowledge like that, but knowledge in the deepest sense. It gives us, it facilitates us to have the inclination and the facilities to cultivate knowledge of the self. Without a sattvic mind, without the mind being in goodness, that internal environment, then it's very, very difficult to cultivate a desire or an inclination for that kind of knowledge. And if we don't create, if we don't facilitate, then what will happen? We'll ignore. We'll ignore things that we should not ignore. We'll ignore discovery, self-discovery, introspection. We'll ignore those principles. Contemplation, meaningful relationships, significant relationships in our life, community, community which supports that kind of responsible life. All of these things are important. Not only looking at the end result, but also looking at the moment by moment result. Understanding that, today is an important day. We don't have tomorrow. We have today. And today will create what transpires tomorrow. So in order to have, and today, there you are the result of your yesterdays, what you've done in your past. But today has nothing to do with it. There's nothing you can do about the past. You can't change it. You can't change the effects that yesterday had on you. And similarly, if you're always thinking about tomorrow, you're missing out on the core component on having a meaningful, a significant, a profound tomorrow. If we're trying just to live in tomorrow, not having the awareness that today is important because tomorrow doesn't exist. And when it does and how it does is dependent on our mindfulness of today. That's a very important principle to understand. So Krishna is giving this knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita so that we're aware we can come to the light of knowledge, which will free us from doubt, free us from fear. And as it says in the Bible, the truth sets us free. So these principles contained in the Bhagavad Gita are meaningful truths, universal truths, that if we implement, they're not just meant to be studied and, put a certificate on your wall. I studied Bhagavad Gita. No, these are principles that are meant to be implemented in your life on a day-to-day, moment-by-moment basis. Excuse me. So we'll go on to the next verse. We read 28, and Krishna's making that statement that energy is unmanifest, manifest, and unmanifest again. So if it has that stream, that flow, why are you lamenting? So the next thing Krishna says is he's talking about the soul. And he says in text 29, some look on the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, and some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. What's amazing about the soul? Think about it. Think about all that we've spoken about here. What is amazing about the soul? Can anyone give me a response to that? Based on what you've heard thus far, in terms of Krishna's, particularly in his description of the soul, the eternality of the soul, the minuteness of the soul, what's amazing? Anyone want to venture to guess? No one? Okay. Anyone
It,
there?
it's unbreakable,
Yes,
insoluble, can't be
yeah,
burned or dried, it's everlasting,
yes.
immovable, and eternally the same.
And where did that come from?
Text 24.
Ah, so it's one of the points or that Krishna is giving in order to establish the distinction. Thank you very much, Shamai. And James is saying, no, oh, let me put that up again so I can read it. James is saying, he's offering the knowledge of the soul frees the mind of suffering. Yeah, that's an amazing feature of the soul, as we're discussing. When we have that knowledge, the suffering that we're experiencing, we can be free from that suffering. Very good. Thank you, James. And thank you, Sean Mai. Anyone else want to say what is amazing about the soul? He says a few things. Some look at the soul as amazing. So I made a few notes here. The fact that the atomic soul is within the body of a gigantic animal, right? Like an elephant. Gigantic animal weighs how many tons? In the body of a gigantic banyan tree. You've seen a banyan tree, right? You don't have to go to India to see a banyan tree. There were banyan trees in Puerto Rico. There are banyan trees here in South Florida. So you look at the amazing structure of a banyan tree, how big it is. The roots go down and the branches go up, and it's enormous. It's big. It can grow. Look at a redwood tree. Ever seen a redwood tree in Northern California? How big it can grow? So these giant bodies, and the word body is used in relationship to that which is manifest and demonstrates the symptoms of life, etc. So in this observation, the fact that the atomic soul is within the body of a gigantic animal, in the body of a gigantic banyan tree or a redwood tree, and also in microbic germs, millions and billions of which occupy only an inch of space, is certainly very amazing. That's a meditation to think the finite soul, atomic particle of spiritual energy, is amazing. It has that power that it can motivate, give life and consciousness according to the level of covering that it has. It's interesting to note that according to the body, the soul enters into, there's a level of consciousness that is there, that is equipped with the body, right? Because the body envelops the soul. And the predominating uh, guna or mode of material nature that's there is has an effect on consciousness. It's like you have an object that's transparent, right? You can see right through it. You have an object that has a little fogginess to it. Um, what do they call it? What's the word I'm looking for? You know, when you can't see through it you can't see clearly
Opaque,
through it.
opaque, opaque.
Okay, thank you, Shamai. You have opaque and then you have solid. So you have different levels, and according to whether it's transparent, opaque, or solid, is whether you can see through it clearly, or see through it at all. And that's the way the gunas work. Whether you can see clearly is sattva gun. That gives you clarity of perspective. And that's why in yoga, one of the features of yoga is to cultivate a sattvic mind, because it sets up the ability to see things in clear perspective. And then when Rajagun is there, it becomes more opaque. You may be able to still see through it, but not clearly. So in Rajagun, what is not clear, that your action, because Rajagun means action. You do act, you're very active. You actually need Rajagun or motive passion to be active. Everyone, while embodied, has the three modes of nature within their body, but action comes to pass when you need to be active. When you sleep, you can't be in Rajagun. Otherwise, you won't sleep. You'll be up all night pacing, like me. So I must really be in passion. I get up quite often, 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, like that. So the tamagun, ignorance, is what causes sleep, but it also causes the inability while awake to see things as they are, to see things clearly. So this soul, this amazing soul, and seeing that it has the potency in any species of life to motivate it and have a degree of consciousness according to the body that it takes. That is, each body, each species it comes equipped with a certain level of consciousness. And within human being, according to the Vedas, it says in the human form of life, there are 400,000 different levels of consciousness in the human form of life. And what determines what level of consciousness you have? How are the modes affecting your perspective? How deep effect does Tamagun have on you? Because that will cause you not to be able to see things. It creates it's like solid. You can't see the other side of solid. But if you go to Rajagun, which is passion, you'll be able to see through it, like opaqueness. You'll be able to see through it, but you won't see through clearly. So Rajagun causes us to act, causes us to do things, causes us to be creative, but it also obstructs clarity of perspective. We're influenced by um, mamatwa. Mamatwa means possessiveness. It means attachments that along with Rajagun comes unlimited desires and subsequent attachments to those desires. And that obstructs vision. So Sattva-gun, clarity of mind. And therefore, we have to understand. And that's why Krishna is doing what he is doing. He's trying to put us in contact with the embodiment of goodness, which is the spirit soul. That's Shuddha Sattva. Shuddha Sattva means the spiritual energy is pure. It's not influenced by the material energy. Shuddha Sattva. That is the real nature of the soul. But when that finite soul comes into contact with material energy, it gets those influences, attacking it. Sometimes ignorance, sometimes passion, sometimes goodness. And there's a constant revolving of those influences. Yoga it is a controlling aspect of our life. It teaches us how to control our mind and our senses. And to the degree that we are yukta, yukta means yogis, means one who is in yoga, following yogic principles, yukta. Krishna uses that word in the Bhagavad Gita. And when we get to that platform of understanding, then we're able to see things clearly. And eventually, due to the purity of the manifestation of the soul and its awareness, its consciousness, then the gunas have less and less of an effect. In Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of love and devotion for the Supreme, that has the sadhana of Bhakti Yoga, the chanting of the names of God, the offering of your food to God in gratitude, all of these different aspects or dimensions of Bhakti Yoga have the potency of Bhakti Yoga is that it has a purificatory effect on the heart and the perspective. It helps to diminish the influence of Tamagun and Rajagun. And in the initial effects of the sadhana of Bhakti Yoga is to establish the mind in the sattvic position so that the clarity of perspective is there. When the clarity of perspective is there, the commitment to the Bhakti Yoga sadhana takes place. One of the greatest challenges of a yogi, one of the greatest challenges that a yogi meets is commitment. To actually commit to a sadhana, to a strategy, to a methodology or a discipline that will help us gradually elevate consciousness first, through passion to goodness, and eventually through the purificatory force of the sadhana practice. It cleanses the heart, and the heart will no longer be influenced by the gunas. And then what opens up is the whole vision and understanding of the nature of life. And we see the connection of all living beings. That's when ahimsa, you don't have to practice ahimsa. You can experience ahimsa by elevating the consciousness through sadhana, which Patanjali describes as the practice of your yoga discipline repeatedly over a long period of time. In Bhakti Yoga, it's so potent that if you do the Bhakti Yoga sadhana of chanting japa, of chanting in kirtan, of doing the various regulative performances of the principles of bhakti, that it has that purificatory effect, and we are able to see with greater clarity of perspective. And eventually, all that is dirty within the heart is removed. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that a wonderful scenario? Wouldn't you agree that that is something to strive for and commit to?
Yes,
And
definitely.
thank you, Shamayu. Mai, I know you're very committed. But you know what's the beauty is if you just give yourself, if you just make a deal with your mind, because your mind has so many reasons why not to commit to my yoga practice. If you make a deal, I'm going to try it sincerely for a period of time. I remember when I first started in 1972, the Swami that I was with, he said, just give this a year. Commit to the bhakti yoga practice for a year. And if you don't feel any kind of change or any kind of inspiration coming from it or any kind of purification or transformation of consciousness, then you just resume your life as it is. He said, logically, the vegetarian diet, just from a logic perspective, is healthy. So you're not going to suffer from that. And giving up intoxications is just healthy all the way around, both and psychologically and physiologically. So he said, just give it a little bit of time. So that kind of sadhana, under the guidance of a qualified teacher, will cause transformation of the heart, will cause the lesson of the effects. A snake, if you remove the fangs of a snake, what potency does its bite have? So if you minimize the effects, the fang of tamagun and the fang of rajagun, if you're able to minimize the effects of those, then even when it tries to bite you, it doesn't have the effect. The strength of sattva is so strong. And then eventually we rise to Shuddha Sattva, the pure platform. So, 803. Oh my God. Sorry to go over. If anyone has any question or comment, I first want to thank you all very much for your questions, James. Wonderful question. Thank you. Shamami, thank you. Does anyone else have a question or observation or a aha moment or realization that you'd like to share with the rest of the people in this group? Anyone? We'll continue from where we left off in verse 30 of Bhagavad Gita. If there are no questions or comments.
Well, I have I was waiting to let someone else jump in, but well, you mentioned about how words can hurt like more than physical elements, and there's humility, like not being affected by the words if one was advanced. But you first mentioned how words can be very painful, especially over a long time, like when repeatedly, like being criticized or demeaned or whatever. So maybe we're doing maybe it's an injustice to tolerate sometimes, to the person who's causing the harm and to yourself, like it's an injustice, like just tolerate that's not real humility? Or I mean, I wonder about that, because like Prahlad Maharaj, his father was torturing him, and he just chanted Hare Krishna. We hear of great souls like Ambarish Maharaj and in the Bhagavatam.
Haridas Thakur and
Mm.
so many of the great historical bhakti yogis of the past that they
Yes,
endured so much.
and Jesus Christ, and says turn the other cheek, but um, I don't know. Sometimes it's not, maybe not always appropriate to do that.
Well, I mean, you shouldn't. This does not mean that you just tolerate. I mean, the best thing to do, especially at least on my level, is just to go away from conversation like that. Because if you engage in conversation, then you get into defense mode, right? It's
Mhm.
natural. Oh, you said
Mhm.
this about me. That's not true. How can you say? You get, and what does that lead to? That leads to anger. And what does
Mm.
anger lead to? Frustration. What does frustration lead to? Loss of intelligence. Then you may say something that you really don't want to say, and you really, So it's best to not stay in an environment where that kind of thing is going on. Or if you hear it second-handedly, that's when you can assume the posture of humility. If you're in a situation where someone is bad-mouthing you or criticizing you or someone that you know, the best thing to do is just to leave that and not hear it, not allow it to, the toxicity of that kind of
Mhm.
statement, not allowed to poison your mind and cause all kinds of mental disruption.
Yes, thank you. Yes, yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shama. You always have
Mhm.
such thoughtful questions. I appreciate
Mhm.
it. Anyone else want to speak up? Anyone else? Observation, reflection? No? Okay, well, thank you so much, you all. I want to wish you an upcoming week filled with happiness, healthiness, being healthy, and holiness. The three H's: happy, healthy, and holy. This is the 3H club here. So have a wonderful week and hope to see you next week, next Tuesday, same time, same station, right here on our Zoom channel. Until then.